being your Member of Parliament now for the last 18 years and working with many of you on many of the issues that make me believe this is a great place to live and a great place to bring up a family. I was born at St Helier Hospital. I've lived here 53 years. We're competing on years, it seems, at the moment. And my children, all three of them, were born at the hospital as well and go to local schools. And those schools are one of the great assets we have in this borough. It's one of the things that makes people want to move here. It's one of the things that makes people want to stay here. It's why I started to raise some years ago the need to make sure we had sufficient primary school places. As the birth rate went up, we secured the resources, we've expanded the primary schools, and now we're starting to do the same for our high schools to make sure that there are places available. And it was really good news this year that 97% of parents secured the school of their choice when it came to high school allocations. A really good result, the best in London, a product of a team effort between a local council and local Liberal Democrat members of Parliament. In terms of other issues, the health service always is my priority. It's why I've campaigned with others, and particularly the local authority, to oppose the proposals to close the accident and emergency unit and maternity units, and why I will continue to pursue those issues during the next Parliament. But we also need to focus on the economy, both nationally, internationally and locally. And locally I've been working to make sure that we attract additional investment into this borough, and over the last 5 years we've seen £350 million of new investment coming in, new jobs, new opportunities. And we have in our borough a hidden gem, the Institute for Cancer Research, which also are now looking to expand and develop. And I think that gives us great opportunities for science-based growth in this area. But it's not just about local issues, although I am passionate about them as a local resident. It is also about what we can do nationally. And over the last 5 years, both as a minister and as a backbench member of Parliament, I've pursued my passions, which are about how we improve the quality of care in this country, and particularly have been able to overhaul the law governing social care in this country, make sure that we have a fairer system fit for the 21st century, doubled the investment that's going into dementia research, outlawed age discrimination in the NHS, and made sure that mental health gets the priority it deserves. It's a shaming fact that in this country, mental health until this last few years did not have the same legal standing as physical health. That's changed, there's more to do, and I'm now going to draw my remarks to a close so that we can get on with the questions. Thank you very much. The productivity and efficiency pressures that the NHS has been under in the last 5 years. Back in 2008, the last Labour government, through the Chief Executive of the NHS, set a target of between 15 and 20 billion being efficiency savings over 4 years. That goal was extended to be achieved over 5 years, and the NHS has performed remarkably well in terms of delivering on those efficiency savings, which have then been reinvested into the National Health Service. But, and it's an important but, that can only go so far. And we had in the autumn last year an autumn statement in which we committed as a government an additional 2 billion starting from this April as a down payment on delivering a plan that was set out by the NHS itself to both modernise and improve services. And one of the things that was said in that 5-year forward view was that by 2020 there will be a £30 billion funding gap in the National Health Service. It identifies further changes that can make some of that gap go away, but it recognised that there will be a need to raise additional revenues for the National Health Service. It goes to the point that was being made by the gentleman earlier on about paying enough for our National Health Service, and the answer to that question is no, we don't, and we need to be prepared in future to put more money in. And it's why we've said as a party that we will fund the £8 billion gap. We've identified the tax changes that we would make. We would not have as many reliefs that currently exist for capital gains tax. We would not continue with a particular shares for rights scheme that was introduced, which we think is not an effective way of using public money. And we would also grow the spend on the NHS in line with growth in the economy after 2018, once we've addressed the issue of the deficit. And that brings me back to the local situation. And you mentioned the fact that Epsom St Helier has a deficit. It's had a deficit over these 5 years. That deficit has actually gone down year on year, and they are forecasting that the deficit will come to an end in the next year, and as a result of that, we'll be able to move to what is called Foundation Trust status, which is a mark of the fact that they are financially viable and delivering great care as well. And that seems to me to be a rather good outcome, and is why I'm confident we can campaign and maintain our local services. The answer to your question, sir, is the approach that we want to take is to depart from the position that the Conservatives now want to take, and we want to adopt a position which says you have to balance the way in which you deal with the deficit over the next 5 years. In other words, you have partly to meet it through continuing spending reductions on some departments, and we've indicated the departments we want to protect, as you rightly say in your question, but also by tax changes as well. We believe that there is a legitimate case for saying that the wealthiest part of our society should be contributing through such changes as capital gains tax, additional revenues to the exchequer. But we also think that the work that we've started during this Parliament, where we've seen a tenfold increase in the amount that we are getting back through tax evasion, in other words preventing tax evasion succeeding, needs to carry on so that we can raise up to 6 billion extra revenue a year to contribute to the deficit reduction programme in the next 3 years. We want to get the deficit down by 2018. That's our goal.
Thank you. Paul.
It is an important question. It's the key question really of the election, how we make sure we have an economy that is growing and strong and able to generate the wealth and the jobs that we and our families want. But I refute entirely the proposition which was that we should not have been involved in dealing with the deficit. Deficit reduction is absolutely central to having a stable economy and allowing the economy to recover. If we had not formed a stable government in 2010, we would have gone the way of some of our European neighbours in terms of the economic mess that they have had to deal with. I want to make 2 other points, if I may. One is that there is this myth that somehow the last Labour government taxed the rich more than this coalition. The reality is only in 1 year did the last Labour government actually tax richer people at a higher rate than this coalition government has actually done. And when it comes to dealing with issues of tax evasion, this coalition government, because of Liberal Democrat ministers in it promoting this particular cause, have increased by tenfold the amount that's recovered from people avoiding tax. And of course we've managed to deliver a £10,000 tax threshold, which has put more money back in people's pockets.
Thank you.
You don't join the Liberal Democrats and expect a big political career. You certainly don't expect to become a Member of Parliament, and you certainly don't expect to become a Minister. So it was about the values of the party that I chose to join. I was motivated by people like Shirley Williams, who I believe is a great politician. And when it comes to those tough decisions that often are free votes in Parliament, then there are a whole range of factors that come into my mind, not least my Christian faith. And that does require me sometimes to reflect and quite often struggle between what different Christians think is the right answer to a question. And one of the things I've learned in the 18 years I've been a Member of Parliament when I've been addressing issues of conscience is that there is not always a single right answer. There is not always a uniquely Christian answer to a question, whether it be same-sex marriage, where there are Christians on both sides of the argument, and I hope that they can respect each other's points of view. I sided with those who said monogamy and loving relationships should be celebrated, and we should have and allow same-sex marriages. And I'd love to give the answer to the embryo question, and perhaps we'll get a chance to talk about that later, because I think that's a very important issue too. It is often about compromise, and those compromises often take place within political parties. We know during the last Labour government there were many compromises and many rows between those within that government. Those rows have been made more obvious because we've had a coalition for the last 5 years, and that coalition has had to make compromises. One of the ones that we have had to make, and which we are and have paid a price for, has been the tuition fee changes. But it's worth just noting that the Institute for Fiscal Studies, that has been referred to as a very eminent source of facts on a number of occasions this evening, has described the changes that the coalition has brought in as being more progressive than the system that it replaced. And I would urge people to look at the work that Martin Lewis has done, which sets out why so many of these things are myths rather than facts when it comes to the changes we've made. And when it comes to issues around dissolution with politics, I think the thing that most disturbed me and caused me to be concerned about politics and the state of politics goes back to a decision that was made for this country to enter in a war in Iraq on the basis of very little evidence, and I think that did more to diminish politicians and the view that people have of us. Burstow, we had a commitment to introduce recall on the basis of serious offences. That's been implemented in this Parliament. I don't believe just having a referendum on a question that is simply about has a promise subjectively yes or no been broken does make sense, so I wouldn't support that.
Thank you.